All right, perfect. All right, so I'm happy to be here and excited to give our first lunch and learn of the new year. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about New Year's resolutions. And despite it being a new year, does that also mean that it is a new you? Yeah. All right, I've got no financial disclosures or conflicts of interest. And so just to give you an outline of where we're going today, I'm going to review the history of New Year's resolutions, kind of how these came about. I will review looking at kind of your past resolutions and your success rate with maintaining those throughout the course of the year. We'll talk about the reasons why maybe those have not been as successful as we'd like in the past. And then we'll spend a majority of our time talking about strategies to help you increase success in sticking to those New Year's resolutions this year. So I'm no history buff, but giving this talk kind of prompted me to do a little bit of research regarding the history of this behavior of setting New Year's resolutions. So this actually started over 4,000 years ago with the ancient Babylonians, and their New Year started in March when the crops were being planted. And they would engage in a 12-day religious festival during which they would either crown a new king or reaffirm their loyalty to their king, but they also made promises to their pagan gods to pay back debts or to return borrowed equipment that was often farm equipment. And if they kept those promises, then they would be in the god's favor for the course of the year and have that kind of good luck or good favor. And if they didn't, of course, they would fall out of that god's favor, which is a place that no one wanted to be. Around 46 BC, we switched over to the Julian calendar, and January was named for the Roman god Janus. And that's a picture of him up in the corner there that you can see, where one face is kind of facing backward, reflecting on the past, and the other face is looking forward to reflections and resolutions. He is also the guardian of gates and doors. So you can think of kind of the door opening to the new year as well. And so though our resolutions are quite different perhaps than those of the ancient Babylonians, we still engage in this practice. We're excited and motivated for a new year. We take time to kind of reflect on the year that's passed and maybe think about some things that we would like to be different or that we would like to change going forward. And so these are some common resolutions. And as you look through this list, I wonder if you recognize any of these as having been included on your previous list, or maybe even this year's list of resolutions, of things that you'd like to change or things that you'd like to do: exercise more, lose weight, get organized, quit smoking. So these are quite common. And just as a reminder, please do feel free to enter any comments or things into the chat, and we'll go through those at the end of the presentation. I wish that we could have some interaction here in person, but c'est la vie. These are our times now. So we make all these resolutions, but we don't have a magic wand just to make us new people when it turns into a new year. And so unfortunately, oftentimes our New Year's resolution lists from one year to the next can often look like this, where, lose weight didn't quite happen. And so the next resolution turns into buying bigger clothing, and being nice to your girlfriend instead turns into being nice to your ex-girlfriend. We unfortunately, despite all of that motivation, this is how oftentimes it turns out. And by February, about 80% of folks have kind of given up on their New Year's resolutions. So we still got a few more days here left in January to get us all on track to make sure that we're able to stick to these throughout the course of the year. But the question is, we're so motivated on January 1st, and we make these resolutions and we feel like we're really going to do them. So what happens? Why aren't we able to kind of stick to these things? So turns out there's a lot of reasons why we might fall flat in keeping to our New Year's resolutions. We're not prepared. So really this timing is external. Where there's nothing necessarily that changes in us or in our lives from December 31st to January 1st. And in reality, we've probably been spending the past month or so kind of preparing for various holidays and gatherings and things like that. And the last thing on our mind is preparing for these behavior changes, preparing to enact these resolutions. So we're really not kind of prepared either psychologically or even kind of physically or instrumentally to make these big changes just kind of on a dime like that on January 1st. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through some of the ways to make sure that we can stick to these things and how we can better prepare ourselves. Oftentimes we're setting unrealistic goals. Maybe you set a goal to run the Columbus Marathon in October, but realistically you need a double knee replacement and your surgery keeps getting pushed back because of COVID. And so the likelihood that you're going to be able to even start preparing to train for that is probably not until August, which doesn't give you too much time to prepare, and you were never really a runner in the first place. So we kind of set ourselves up for failure with these unrealistic goals. Perhaps you don't have the support in place to really help you stick to these things. Maybe your goal is to quit smoking, but there are 2 other people in your household who smoke and they have no plans or intentions. So you don't have the support around you to really make sure that you're able to hold yourself accountable and stick to these changes that you'd like to make. Oftentimes we don't have tracking in place, so we're not able to tell whether we're making progress toward our goals or not. And that feedback part of it, that you're actually making progress, is a really important part to kind of recommitting to these goals and continuing that motivation going forward. It also helps us know whether we are making progress toward those goals. Like, say, for instance, your goal is to save more money, but if you don't know how much you saved last year and you're not really checking how much you're saving now, then you're not getting that feedback to know if you're actually making progress and kind of sticking to that resolution. And so it can just kind of fall off or slowly dwindle as far as being present in your thought process on a day-to-day basis. Perhaps your New Year's resolution is not in line with your values. So sometimes these resolutions come from what I call the shoulds. What we think we should want to do or should want to change. And those things are coming from other people or from societal ideals and not really from what's really important to us. And so if those things are not in line or if they are in conflict, then it's very difficult to stick to something that is in direct conflict of what is important to you. So for example, maybe, a New Year's resolution is, I want to travel more. You see all these pictures on social media of people, in various exotic places, and it looks like they're having so much fun. You say, I want to do that. I want to travel more and get out. But you also have, maybe aging parents that it's really important for you to spend some time with. And so, traveling more is going to take you away from them and really kind of come in conflict with what is truly important to you. And it's kind of this external value being pushed on you rather than what's most important to you. So it's important for those things to kind of line up in order for you to stay committed to it. And lastly here, we really just don't make a habit of this new behavior. If it's, something brand new that you're trying to do and you don't kind of do it on a consistent basis, then you miss a day and one day becomes 2 days and 2 days becomes 2 weeks and 2 weeks becomes the rest of the year that you're not engaging in this new behavior. And so making it into a habit, pairing it with something else that you are already doing on a daily or weekly basis is one way to kind of make that habit of it. So let's do it differently this year. Let's stick to those New Year's resolutions. Let's talk about ways that we can make these stick. So I'd like for you to take a moment here and think of one resolution, either this year or in years that passed, that really feels especially important to you. You know, this is the one that you really want to stick to. You really feel like this is important. It's going to make a positive change in your life, and it's something that you'd really like to do. So take a moment, think about what that one resolution is. And if you have access, go ahead and write that down. Write down what that resolution is, because we're going to go through some steps to kind of mold that into something that you're going to be able to stick to and kind of follow through with. And so you can kind of transform it a little bit as we go through the talk today to make sure that you've got a good resolution that you're able to stick to going forward. So I'll give you just a moment to do that. So the first thing that we'll talk about is values, and I mentioned this already in kind of why they fall flat, but let's talk a little bit more about it. Does this resolution, does this goal matter to you? And as I said, you know, not mattering to society or to what other people think that you should do or what you think other people think you should do, but what is really and truly important. I gave one example, but you know, thinking about working out every day. If your plan is, you know, my resolution is I want to go to the gym 5 days a week. Well, if you're going to work and then you're going straight to the gym and then you're not getting home until 8 or 8:30, and then you're not having time to spend maybe with your family at home, and it's very important to you, it's a core value, that family time, then going to the gym is taking time away from you spending time with your family. And so again, when those two things are in conflict, your resolution and what's really valuable or important to you, then you may actually be doing yourself harm by sticking to that resolution. Because when our behaviors and our values are in conflict, then that causes some pretty significant psychological distress. And so I want you to take a moment and look at that resolution that you looked at or that you wrote down and say, is this in line with my values? Do you see anywhere where it might conflict with some other things that are really important to you? And just make sure that what it is that you're trying to achieve or what it is that you're trying to change is in line with those core values of yours. And some of you may say, well, I don't know what my core values are. And you know, that's perfectly valid. And I think important for us to kind of take a step back and to look at, especially when we're thinking about behavior change. And so I've included, and hopefully you received, you know, the slides here, but there's a link there for a values card sort. And so this is an exercise that I often use with myself as well as with my patients, but it's really cool to do. It's basically a deck of cards that you can go through online. There's lots of different ones, so you don't have to use this one. I'm not promoting it in particular. There's lots of different ones to choose from, and they all have their own kind of unique qualities, but this one seemed to be pretty easy to use. Basically, each of the cards has a word written on it, and sometimes the programs give definitions, sometimes it's just open for interpretation. But you essentially sort these cards into whether these things are important to you or not important to you. And you slowly dwindle down the number of cards that are important to you that identify things like, you know, family or valued work or helping others, things like that, that are these kind of broader concepts that might be important or might be a core value of yours. And you dwindle those down to about the 5 that are most important to you. And these are relatively consistent. You know, they might change in priority from 1 month or 1 year to another, where one, you know, kind of becomes more important or more valuable to you or at that particular time. But, you know, the core is relatively stable. And so, you know, if you are aware and know of what your core values are, then you can kind of choose the goals or resolutions that are really most in line with what your core values are. So I encourage you to, you know, take a moment and go through this. I do it at least twice a year for myself, just to kind of see where I stand and to do some reflection on whether, you know, what I'm doing in my day-to-day life and what I'm pursuing is really in line with those values. So timing, we talked a little bit about the timing kind of being external, but I want to talk a bit about our psychological timing too. Um, are you ready to make this change? As I said, nothing really changes about who we are from December 31st to January 1st. And so it's important to kind of think about whether you've gone through the psychological processes necessary in order to start changing this behavior. So looking at the stages of change here, Prochaska and Di Clemente kind of talked about these stages of change. And so we go through pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. And so the pre-contemplation phase is essentially where we haven't really thought about changing this behavior. We don't really think that the behavior is problematic, and we've not taken any steps to make any sort of changes. The contemplation stage is when you start thinking about changing this behavior. You start to think that maybe it's a problem, or maybe it's something that I'd like to change, and you kind of weigh the pros and cons. You weigh the pros and cons of staying the same, and not making the change, and the pros and cons of actually going through and making that change, and try and figure out whether this is something that you'd like to move forward with. And then in the preparation stage, you're kind of ready to take action. You've decided that this is a change that you'd like to make, and maybe you've even started to take some small steps toward making that change. And then in the action phase, obviously, you've started to change this behavior, and you're committed to kind of continuing that. And so, in thinking about these resolutions, is this something that you have actually gone through that psychological process of the pre-contemplation, the contemplation, weighing those pros and cons, making preparation, starting to, kind of change those small behaviors in order to, make this larger behavioral change? Because we can't really go from pre-contemplation on December 31st and jump right into action on January 1st. We have to go through this psychological process of preparing ourselves, motivating ourselves, making preparation in order to make that change from a psychological perspective. So are you psychologically ready? Have you gone through those processes in order to make this change and this commitment? Is now the right time? So I said too, this is January 1st. Maybe January 1st is not the right time for you to make this change. Maybe your goal is to start running every day, but you don't particularly like the cold. And so there's a lot of disincentive for you to kind of get out there and start doing this behavior. And so you might look at the snow and say, oh, it's 6 degrees here today, and I don't think that I'm going to do it. And that detracts from you being able to make the change. So maybe it'd be better to set yourself up for success if you started this resolution in the springtime, where the weather was a little bit more inviting for you and a little bit more motivating. And it kind of takes away that barrier of the weather in order to you making this change. The other thing to think about is, maybe you don't have the things in place. Maybe you don't have the finances to buy a guitar and pay for guitar lessons because you wanted to learn a new skill or start a new hobby. Or maybe you have other stressors going on in your life right now that are really requiring your attention. And now might not be the best time to kind of devote your time and attention to something new or different. And then lastly, have you prepared? Do you have the things in place that you need in order to start this? So if you decide that you want to read more, do you have your library card renewed? Or do you have a subscription to the magazine that you want to read? If you want to exercise more, do you have the equipment that you need in your home in order to be able to do that? Or is it back ordered until April because of everything going on? So do you have the things? Have you prepared kind of instrumentally and physically? Do you have the things in place that you're going to need in order to make this change or commit to this resolution? We talked a bit about support, but we know that support is incredibly important as we're trying to make big changes, and that if you don't have that support and that accountability, that you are less likely to be successful. We don't lie to anyone more than we lie to ourselves, and so having someone there, someone on the outside to kind of hold you accountable to make sure that you are sticking to these things can be really important to ensuring your success. So have you thought about who that could be? Have you talked to them about the fact that, this is going to be the change that you'd like to make, or this is your resolution? And have you thought about a plan for how they're going to hold you accountable? Are you going to talk on the phone every week? Or are you going to send a text message every morning? Are you going to, post pictures on Facebook? Have you thought about kind of how that accountability plan will work? Who might want to join you. So having someone join you in making a change can really make that a lot easier and a lot more fun. And so is there anyone who might want to join you in this behavior change? Or even maybe they have a different resolution, but it can kind of align with yours and you can hold each other accountable for different behaviors. That can often work too. The other part is, how can you support yourself? So what types of rewards can you offer yourself along the way as you have those small successes over the course of your journey? Putting those rewards in place is a way that you can support yourself and kind of maintain that motivation. It also helps that you can acknowledge the progress that you're making along the way. So acknowledging that progress and kind of applauding yourself for that, again, just reinforces that motivation for a continued change behavior. So really this kind of boils down to creating SMART goals. And I imagine at this point that most of you have heard of this, and maybe you've even thought about applying this to resolutions, but I'd like for us to take some time today to apply each of these aspects to a New Year's resolution. So SMART goals are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based or timely. So we'll go through each of these, and I want you to, go ahead and take a look at the resolution that you wrote down and see if you can kind of morph it a little bit to meet the specifications and become a SMART goal. So what do we mean by specific? So the who, what, where, when, and why. There is a reason that a target has a bullseye. It's a very specific spot that we are trying to hit, because otherwise we're just throwing darts all over the room and no one knows who has how many points or who wins, and somebody ends up with an injury. We have to have a very specific target in order to know if we're hitting it, and in order to kind of drive our behaviors in a guided direction, right? So that we're not just kind of all over here floundering about, not quite sure exactly where we're going. So what do you want to accomplish? Why is this important? Who is involved? Where is it located? And which resources or limits are involved? When I think about this, one of the resolutions from the list that I had shared previously was live life to its fullest, live life to the fullest. What does that mean? To me, that's, throwing darts all around the room, because that's not specific. And so you're not going to know, one, whether or not you've accomplished that, but two, how exactly do you go about accomplishing that? What does that mean to you? And so maybe that is your resolution, but what does that exactly mean to you? What does that look like? Maybe for you, that means, spending more time with family, or, accomplishing something specific at work, or, going for hikes every weekend. Whatever that is, living life to its fullest is this unspecific, anomalous thing. And so really being specific on the who, what, where, when, and how is important to identifying your goals. So we also want to make sure that these things are measurable. And I love this little cartoon down here. You change the results by measuring them, and that's very true. We want to be able to measure our results. We want to be able to know when we're making progress. So how much, how many, how often, and for how long. You also want to think about how often you're going to check in about measuring things too. So do you check in to review your progress every day or every week or maybe even every hour? If your goal is to, have reduced tension, are you checking in with yourself maybe every 30 minutes to make sure that your shoulders aren't becoming earrings for you? So it matters what your goal is as far as how frequently you want to check in about these things too. I gave the example earlier of saving more money. That's something that we can concretely measure, but we have to measure it in order to know if we're making progress. If we're wanting to save more money, maybe I saved 2 cents last year, and so then this year I saved 3 cents. Well, technically that's more, but I doubt that that was the goal of the resolution there, right? And so you want to know kind of and set out very specifically how much over what time period, and then how often are you going to check in about that? We want our resolutions or our goals to also be achievable or attainable, right? How are you going to accomplish this goal? How realistic is it for you based on other things that are going on in your life right now in order to accomplish it? As I gave the example before of, learning a new skill or a new hobby, do you have the finances to be able to devote to that right now? Do you have the time to be able to devote to that right now? And so, in thinking about molding these resolutions, it's really also about, taking stock of what is going on in your life right now and how this resolution can fit into those other aspects of your life, because they don't go away just because you have this new resolution or new goal, right? Nothing, no magic wand happened, no fairy godmother from December 31st to January 1st to kind of take away all of the other stressors or strains in your life. So it's not about taking those things away, but it's about finding a resolution that is going to fit within the things that are also going on in your life right now. The last point I'll say about this is this within your control? So, when I think about this one, I think about the idea that, oftentimes people want to get a promotion at work. I don't know about you, but I don't promote myself. And so that's not within my control. And so if that is your resolution, we might want to think about things that are within your control that could kind of move you toward that. So if that's really kind of what you're wanting to work on, maybe then the goal or the resolution is to increase your productivity at work. Find ways that you can, kind of cut out some of the extraneous or other things, or tighten your time frames or things like that so that you can increase your productivity. Or maybe it's, doing a quality improvement project that you can put on your dossier so that, you can present this to the promotion board. So thinking about the steps or the things that are within your control that can kind of get you toward that end goal that might, be within somebody else's control. So I want to make sure when you're taking a look at your resolution, that it is within your control and it's something that is achievable or attainable for you. These all kind of tie together though too, right? Because we talked about the timing or the measure. The measure is looking, at the time frame. Is this achievable in the time frame that we're talking about here too? All right, is this relevant? And so we spent some time talking about values before, but I'd like you to just take a moment on, why am I setting this goal right now? And is it in line with my overall objectives? So you're setting this goal for this month or for this year. What other things are going on in your life this month or this year? And does this really align with those other things, your other goals, your other objectives, the other stuff that's going on in your life? And so taking some time again to reflect on those values and to make sure that this goal is relevant to you, to your life, right now. And then time-based or timely. So we talked a bit about the timing of these things and kind of being prepared, but also talking about when you will start this and when you will finish it. Maybe you set a New Year's resolution in January that you're going to start something in June. That's okay, right? That gives you the time to kind of prepare, do that mental preparation, get the things in place that you need kind of from a physical or instrumental perspective to be able to start this in June. So the resolution is, I will start this new behavior in June. And then when does that finish? Also thinking about, kind of how long it's actually going to take you to accomplish what it is that you've set out to accomplish, making sure that that is a realistic time frame, that that's achievable. Again, when is the best time to start and finish? We talked about, maybe January isn't the best time to start a new outdoor behavior. Is now the right time to start? Again, just kind of thinking about those other things that might be going on in your life, that maybe now is not the right time to actually start that new behavior. And then again, just thinking about how long it might actually take you to accomplish this, being realistic about how long it might take you to prepare for a marathon or to lose a particular amount of weight or to get through that classic novel that you never quite got through in high school or college. What's a realistic time frame of how long you will need in order to accomplish this? And so now I'd like you to take a moment and look back at that resolution. And I hope that you've been able to kind of make some changes to it along the way as we've been talking about this, and look at where you started with that resolution and kind of how it morphed and changed throughout the course of this, and the one that you ended up with. Maybe even just kind of reflect on your emotional experience of looking at those and seeing where you started and your new resolution here, and your level of motivation and your level of comfort or confidence in how much you think that you're actually going to be able to stick to this and do it. Is your resolution now specific and measurable? Does it feel attainable? Is it relevant to you and what's going on in your life right now? And then is it time-based? And make sure that you're checking all of those boxes. And then thinking about just the other things that we talked about before. Do you have the support in place? Who might support you through this, or how might you reward yourself along the way? And so the last thing that I will say is just to be kind to yourself. You are still you, so know yourself. Try to identify where you might experience pitfalls along the way and prepare for them. When our expectations don't align with our reality, it's much easier, or when they do align with our reality, it's much easier to accept. So if you can anticipate that, yes, there will be times where I will, fall off with my diet, or I will fall off with practicing this new hobby that I decided I wanted to do. If you can anticipate that, and that is an expected thing that's going to happen, then it's much easier for you to kind of accept that and to kind of address it and get back on track, rather than it a slip turning into a slide and turning into a fall. So anticipate that there will be setbacks and have a plan for how you're going to get back on track with those. Reward yourself for the progress that you make along the way. So now that you've identified kind of how you're going to measure this, identify some markers along the way that you can say, okay, I've done 5 of this, or I've gone 5 days of doing this new behavior, or whatever it is, I've gone 4 hours without doing this new behavior. Reward yourself. That increases that motivation to kind of continue that behavior, because you're recognizing and acknowledging that you've made progress. And so that makes us feel good. And when we feel good about something, we're more likely to continue to do it. And so make sure that you're checking in along the way and providing yourself with some sort of reward. So having that kind of mapped out beforehand can be really helpful. You already know kind of what you're working toward, right? I'm working toward, 4 days of doing this consecutively, and then I get to do X. Or I give myself Y, or whatever it is. Find a way to reward yourself for the progress that you're making along the way. And that will increase your motivation to kind of continue making those changes. We don't become new people, right? But we can improve and we can grow in ways that are important and impactful to us and to our lives. And with that, I will take any questions that you have. I think Nicole was going to kind of keep an eye if there was anything coming in on the chat.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dr. Engel. That was a wonderful presentation, and you really gave us a lot of information and strategies to be persistent and stick with our goals now that, as you said, we're nearing the end of January and into February. So thank you so much for that. And while some questions, I don't see any at the moment. So like she just mentioned, any questions, please put them in the chat. While we wait for those to come in, I'll just make a couple of announcements. Later today, everyone will be receiving a follow-up email to this Lunch and Learn. And in that email, you will have information on how to access the recording that we have today. It does take a couple days to get posted and processed, so bear with us on that, but it will get up and posted for everyone to view again. And there also will be a link to a survey that if you could take just a couple minutes to fill it out, it helps us get some feedback on our programming, what you guys want to see, how we can better what we're giving you. So we really do look at those and take what you give us to provide you guys with the topics and stuff that you want to see. So be on the lookout for that, and please just take a couple minutes to fill out the survey. Does anybody have any questions? In the chat. Or if you would rather unmute yourself and want to ask your question that way, you can do that as well. I know sometimes typing it in can take a while. I'm not seeing any questions, just a lot of people thanking you for the wonderful presentation. I guess one question that I'll ask would be, if you have one handy or come up with one, a good example of maybe a SMART goal kind of all put together to provide people with.
Gosh, sure.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem. So, something very specific. So I think oftentimes, gym memberships skyrocket in January, right? So we know that exercise is often something that people make a resolution about doing more. And so I would say maybe something to the extent of like, I will begin exercising 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes during each session, beginning on February 1st for the duration of the year. Trying to think of what else I could add to that. But you can see, it's something very specific. It's achievable, right? It's not every day. I'm not going from 0 times at the gym to every day at the gym. It's 3 days a week. That seems pretty reasonable. That seems achievable. It's very specific. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to exercise. It's time-based, 30 minutes, right? You're setting up that expectation. Otherwise, maybe you feel like you have to go there for 2 hours in order for it to be, truly exercise or truly, a session or something like that. So you set up, at least 30 minutes, the number of times a day, when I'm going to start. Notice I didn't start January 1st. I said I'm going to set that up for February 1st because I don't have a gym membership yet. And so I need to do some research on where exactly I want to go. And it's not detracting too much time from the rest of my week where I'm, maybe sacrificing some other things that are important to me. So it's relevant. Health and physical wellness are things that are important values of mine and things that are important to me. So it's relevant for me and kind of lines up there. And it's timely. Lots of gyms are offering good deals right now to join. And so, it makes a lot of sense for me to start that right now. There's nothing kind of externally going on that would put a constraint on that.
Hey, thank you.
Sure.
A couple questions came in during that. Would you mind discussing other means if you do not have someone to always hold you accountable and want to accomplish this goal on your own?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, one of the things that I mentioned was just kind of holding yourself accountable. So making sure that you are keeping track of your progress and how you're doing. So, writing it down really so that you can review, keeping a log of something like that. The other thing is, you can use an online community to kind of reach out. I know lots of people use, things like Facebook or something like that to kind of post, whether they have done this thing that they said they were going to do or not. Then even if no one else, is making that same change, if you post to social media and then you don't one day, someone might reach out and say, hey, where's your picture for the day? Or, hey, how did things go for you today? So thinking about maybe not just in your immediate surroundings, but also kind of a larger community on social media. You can also think about, what if there might be a community surrounding the specific change that you're looking to make. So, maybe there is an online community that you're not aware of other people who are engaged in this behavior that you might be able to connect with and who can hold you accountable.
They're great suggestions. Thank you. And then another question. Do you have any resources or recommendations as far as free workout apps or those reminder apps that tell you to get up and move, or any type of apps to help you track your progress?
That is a great question. I know that I have got a Word document somewhere that has a long list of all kinds of different apps for various things. So I will certainly search through my library. And Nicole, I can send that to you. Would you be able to dispense or disperse that to the group?
Yes, I can send that out to everybody.
I will certainly dig through my files and find some of that, because there are like great apps out there. I think, there's some that you can even install on your computer that, kind of pop up a reminder every 10 minutes or something that says, get up and stretch, or, just do some stretches in your chair or things like that. So even when you're sitting there kind of working on your computer, that you can get a little notification. So those are great, as well as the apps that will, kind of track your walking and things like that. So there are some good ones, and that's a great suggestion, I think, too, of just not even just a reminder, but also a way to kind of hold yourself accountable or keep a log of your progress would be through some of those apps or in your phone.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that sent out. That sounds like a great list. So make sure everybody gets that.
For sure.
Another thing that I've seen people do kind of as reminders is putting like a post-it note or a sticker on your desk, on your computer, to remind you to get up and walk around. We had the Just Breathe initiation that went on a couple years ago. That was the same thing. It was seeing that sticker as a reminder to take a couple of deep breaths and maybe step away from your computer. So if you don't want to have an app, that could be another way to do it, is putting a post-it note or a sticker around your desk, your mirror, wherever you'll see it. Okay, we had another question just come in. Is there an optimal number of resolutions to have to be successful?
Well, I'm not going to speak from a research perspective here, but what I would say is, unless it's really important to start all of these things at the same time, I would recommend just one. Your odds of success are best if you're really focused on one thing at a time. And so these are typically big changes that we're asking ourselves to make. And so I think if you can focus in on one and kind of shore up that you're able to kind of make that change, incorporate it, make it into that kind of daily habit, make this part of your day-to-day life, and make sure that you're on solid ground with that one before starting to try and implement another resolution at the same time, unless they're somehow aligned with one another or they kind of go together and are going to support one another and support your success with each of them. I would recommend just, kind of trying to make one change at a time so that you can really focus on that. And then again, once you're able to kind of shore up that behavior, then you can move on to the next one and start to kind of add and build from there.
Great, great. That was the last one that's currently in there. Do we have any last minute questions? We've had some really, really good ones come through. Give it a couple minutes just to see. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions come through, so we can go ahead and end there. I can hang on for a couple minutes just in case something else comes through. But Dr. Engel, I want to thank you again for being with us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about this very important topic, to help us be even more successful in all of our New Year's resolutions and goals. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in and joined us. I will make sure to get you the follow-up email. I'll make sure to attach the email with all of the apps that she sends me, so everyone will get that information. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.